Hi everyone, this is David from the Saito project, and this video is about the tragedy of the commons problem in blockchain and how to fix it. Now, the tragedy of commons problem is an economic problem. It's a market failure that's associated with farming in collective places. Now, when you say it, most people will think of sheep grazing in a field like this, but this isn't the mental image you should get. The mental image you should get looks something more like this. And what we've got here is we've got a public space where everyone puts their animals out to pasture, and the result is that it essentially breaks down and becomes unusable. The problem was first identified in the mid-19th century by a British economist who asked, why do these spaces look so different than the surrounding spaces that are privately owned? And the answer that he came up with is that it's an incentive problem, that we have the farmer who benefits from putting another sheep on the pasture because it's his sheep and he reaps the benefits of having it fed off of public resources. But the costs of having that sheep on the pasture end up destroying the pasture and getting socialized among all of the farmers. And what we have essentially is an economic problem that is almost never paid attention to in blockchain, where people talk about markets, but they don't understand how they work. And the core way markets work is that individuals are responding to their individual interests and not their group interests. That's what's happening in the economic tragedy of the commons. Now, in blockchain, we're going to see the exact same problem, but we see it with miners putting data onto a blockchain. Their individual incentive is to make the money today, even though it hurts the community, it increases costs, it makes the blockchain unsustainable over time. So understanding that the problem is an economic problem makes looking at the field of solutions that people are suggesting kind of absurd, because none of them actually address the incentives. And they've all got these really horrific trade-offs. The rent proposals that are being discussed in Ethereum are essentially state planning. We've got developers setting out what prices are. This does not work. We have sharding solutions which totally avoid the problem. We have ideas like archive nodes and UTXO commitments, where basically people are coming around to the idea that the blockchain cannot and should not store data. So we're going to pretend that people are doing it, but really we're going to let them delete it. We've got IPFS. There are a lot of solutions basically that give up on the idea of the blockchain being what it should be, an immutable data store that provides the ability for people to use to put data on the chain if they need to. Now, the technical solutions are inadequate. What Saito does is Saito fixes the problem at the incentive level, and it's the only blockchain that does this. And the way that we do this is we have to get rid of the problem, which is that the individual interest is not the same as the group interest, and we have to align the two so that what we are paying and incentivizing the individual to do is exactly what we want the entire group to do. So we need to have a system that's different from existing blockchains, because everyone has to pay market rates. We can't have preferential prices for early users who dump data on the chain early on, for instance. Miners as well, we've got to keep them from passing costs into the future. Because creating a fee market, higher prices today doesn't make the chain more sustainable. It just encourages more people to dump data on the chain today, and there's no guarantee they're around in the future. So how do we actually do this? And this is where we're getting into the technical solution. The technical solution is we're going to have, instead of a permanent chain, we're going to have a looping circular chain. And this chain is, in this image, it's going to be 100,000 blocks long. This can be 1 million blocks, it can be 50 million blocks. The chain can be as long as you want. The point being that when you get to the end of it, when we're producing block 100,001, the UTXO in the first block stop being spendable. And you can think, well, this doesn't make any sense because my tokens are being lost. And if I've put data in that block, it's getting lost as well. How is this a solution? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to specify something that we call automatic transaction rebroadcasting. And under this system, the consensus layer of the software decides which data gets rebroadcast. In the Saito solution, we say if you've got an unspent UTXO, it will be rebroadcast as long as it has enough tokens left to pay a rebroadcasting fee. And the rebroadcasting mechanism works basically the block creator is going to create a specially formatted transaction that gives the user new UTXO and that reattaches the data. And the important thing for the economic perspective is the fact that we've got this fee involved. And the rebroadcasting fee that we are charging is 2 times the average fee paid by new transactions. And this is an economic solution, not a technical solution. And the result of this is that it actually works, and it works completely. Note some of the properties of this solution. For instance, we now have a market price for on-chain data. As there's less space available on-chain, the price of new transactions is going to rise because there's less space for them. More and more blockchain space is being taken up by rebroadcasting. And as the price of new data rises, the fees paid by old data rise more. So this system gives us a market price, a market equilibrium for data, where we don't need a block size cap, but the blockchain economic forces are keeping it at the point where the amount of data that comes into the blockchain is the exact same as the amount of data that goes out. Second problem, as I mentioned, is that block producers are going to voluntarily limit data, because the way you maximize your profits is by maximizing the delivery of value. So if you're producing blocks, you want blocks to be as big as they can get, but no bigger. The third property is that note that we've eliminated passing costs into the future, because a block producer has to do all of the work of validating the last genesis period of the blockchain before they get paid. So you can't just start mining and make money. You've got to actually do the validation work, and then you're paid at the end of it. And one of the important things about this, and the reason it's an incentive change, is that the fees that are getting paid by rebroadcasting transactions, they're going to pay for future work. So the blockchain is always paying for the work that it needs done. And if someone drops off the chain, they're not leaving work there that other people need to bear the costs of. The final really important solution is that there's no more cheating. And if you go back to the technical slide set that we showed, you'll see all of those technical solutions, basically they're turning a blind eye to one or many forms of cheating. And the cheating is always something you can do that lowers your costs relative to what the honest node that we want to be in the system should be expected to do. In this system, though, there's no cheating. If you don't do all of the work that you're getting paid for, you can't produce valid blocks. And the reason for that is you're not going to know what data needs to be rebroadcast. So common ways to cheat in other blockchains are impossible with this full economic solution. If you enjoyed this slideshow, I'd strongly encourage you to visit our website, check out the economics page. This is unfortunately not the only economic incentive problem with existing chains. The free rider problem that we described there is actually a much bigger issue. The good news is there is an economic solution to that too, and we outline it on that page. So please come and visit us online and check out what we're doing. It's saito.io.